Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? Take heed that no man deceive you, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences. All these are the beginning of sorrows. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved.
All right, how's everyone tonight? All right, one person is enough. Okay, you guys are awfully quiet tonight, which is, it might be good or bad. It depends. Might get through it quicker. But at the same time, we wanted to make a clarification. Last week, when I got here, all the reports that I had, and even believers that I know in Minnesota, were all confirming that the little boy had passed away, Landon. And but Landon survived. And Amen. As of Monday, he is recovering. He's recovering with no damage to his brain. There's no brain damage at all whatsoever. It is a total miracle. I guess his parents are believers. Amen. And the pastor of the church made an announcement that Landon is recovering. Zero evidence of brain damage, not just brain damage. There wasn't even any swelling in the brain. No spinal cord injury, no brain damage, no internal injuries. The only thing he had was a few broken bones, and he'll recover very, very quickly. What a blessing. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. This is amazing. I had the little boy with the Lord already, and when I got home that night, he had survived, and people were emailing me, hey, did you know he lived? And he lived, and it was a blessing. At the same time, the man who threw him over I think it was three stories, at the Mall of America, still being investigated. He was a Somalian, and a lot of attacks going on in our world. Jesus talked about the beginning of birth pangs, and this is in Matthew 24, a very famous passage to us, a very famous passage to many of us. But in Mark 13, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that as he was going out of the temple, they asked him, "Teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings we have." And Jesus said, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another which will not be torn down." That precise prophecy, that precise prophecy was fulfilled to the T as the Romans in 70 AD destroyed the temple and they took it apart piece by piece. Exactly what Jesus said. And by the way, you want to see if these stones, they still speak today? You can go down what they call the Wall Street crash. The Wall Street, there's a wall. This is right next to the street. There's a wall, the Wailing Wall. And down this wall, or down the street near the Wailing Wall, there's these stones that have been it looks like somebody threw them overboard. And that's exactly what they are. They are the Wall Street. There's all these massive stones just laid on the street. And those were the stones that Jesus said will be thrown down. So those stones still cry out. You could ask somebody, hey, what are these stones doing here? And you can answer, these are the stones Jesus said will be thrown down. The temple will be destroyed. And he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite to the temple. Peter, James, and John and Andrew were questioning him privately. Tell us, when will these things be? That will be the stones being thrown over. What will be the sign of your coming? And when will all things be fulfilled? What will be the end? When you return, what will happen? And Jesus began to say to them, see to it that no one misleads you. Many will come in my name saying, I am the Messiah, and will mislead many. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be frightened. Those things must take place, but the end, or that is not the end yet, or the end is not yet, which was our theme for last times when Jacob and Lynn and Sarah were here. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places, famines. These things are merely the beginnings of birth pangs. The imagery is a woman in labor, and contractions begin to happen. And it's the beginning of birth pangs. It's not quite birth pangs completely gone yet. It's just the beginning of it. And just this is what the world is going to feel like before Jesus comes. There'll be this pressure and this pressure and this pressure, and then the baby will be delivered. Then the baby will come. And when the baby comes, according to the analogy that Jesus is using, that imagery, it's when Jesus comes. The pressure, the pressure, the pressure, and then the baby comes, and the baby's alive. Yes, please. And this is a wonderful thing, but it's going to be a life. These birth pangs are going to bring life, not death. And so we don't speak of the end of the world. We don't speak of, when people use movies and things like that, it's the end of the world, the end of the world. No, it's the beginning of the new age, the beginning of life. But it has to come through difficult circumstances because God is going to give the world over to what they want. And that is a world without God. You want to know what a world without God looks like? Well, just see what the world looks like now. It's beginning to look like there is no God. And people have lived like this for some time, but the pressure is going to increase. Sri Lanka, the attacks, when we were here on Resurrection Sunday, they were being attacked, churches. Somebody made a comment, these are Catholic churches. And, and actually somebody emailed me, these are Catholic churches. And my thing was, I don't agree with Catholicism, but I love Catholic people and I pray for them. And I wouldn't want any church to get bombed because the Muslims don't make a difference between Christian churches and, they don't go ask before they bomb the place. Is this a Christian church? Is this a Catholic church? They simply see everything as Christendom and everything as an attack. And unfortunately, there were some believers in Sri Lanka that were attacked. 359 people as of now were killed, 500 wounded. 500 wounded, and simultaneous attacks of different churches and different hotels, 40 suspects. But this is across the, people get shocked by this, but this has been quite attacked on Christians throughout the world. Syria, Egypt, the Philippines, of course, just lately. Islamic terrorism all over the European world, all over the Muslim world. And by the way, this is not just there. Another churches in Florida burnt this past week, 4/19. That must have been Friday. And where's the other one? There it is. The one in North Carolina on Saturday were burning. So people are asking the question, why are these churches burning all of a sudden? Well, they've been burning. Nobody's really paid attention to them until the Church of Notre Dame in France began to burn. And now we're starting to see it coming out of different places. By the way, this guy, what is his name? Alan Keenan went on national television to tell us that the problem in the world is Islamophobia. This is right after the Sri Lanka attack. The problem is Islamophobia. See, all these attacks are coming because people are hating Muslims, and so they're just reacting to our hate. It's not the problem with Islam, he says, it's the problem that they are just responding to our hate. So we need to stop being Islamophobic. By the way, the Washington Post, owned by Mr. Bezos from Amazon, printed an article saying we're making a big deal out of Christians being killed. We're making a big deal out of Christians being killed. You know who came to the Christians' rescue? Donald Trump. Blasted Washington Post. And he says, if you're going to make the persecution of Christians a no big deal, then look what's going on in the rest of the world, not just in Sri Lanka. He slammed the Washington Post after this terrible article that came out about the terrorist attack, that we're making a big deal. These are just a few Christians. Now, what's interesting about this is not the fact that they said it. I'm not surprised that they said it. That's the Washington Post. Might as well say the Antichrist newspaper. But the fact that they're downplaying it, that's no big deal. Nothing to see here. When persecution begins to happen in the world, as Jesus said it would happen for my name's sake in all the nations, it's not going to be a big deal. They're just going to go on television and say, well, they were just a bunch of people that hated Muslims, people that hated homosexuals. So it's not a big deal. And it's beginning to feel like that again, or not again, but in the Roman Empire, that Christians were persecuted because they were evil. They were called evil. Christians were persecuted because they said they had orgies, and they were terrible. because Christians, when they got together, they call it love feast, agape feast. And the Romans wanted to attack them, and they said, "Oh, we don't know what happens in those love feasts. I'm sure there's orgies there," because it was a love feast. And love feast to the Roman world was orgies and pedophilia, not in the Christian world, but they attacked Christians because of they thought they were evil. Same thing's going to happen. Look, Islamophobia, LGBT phobia, same thing is going to happen. Again, I have a quick video. Chris, we're good with that? Okay. This is a two-part video. So I'm going to play the first part, and I'll play the second part at the end of our update. But this is done by, has anyone heard of Prager University? It's an online, okay. Yeah. Great videos. It's not a Christian organization. A lot of people think it is. It's a Jewish guy, Dennis Prager, Jewish guy. I agree with him on a lot of things, but doesn't believe in Jesus as a Messiah, but he tolerates Christians and things like that. Great stuff, logical, very cool, very good stuff in terms of dealing with socialism and atheism and things like that. But they're not Christians. But they recognize something, and I hope this video, it was well done, and I hope this video sheds some light into the problem that I think everyone's ignoring.
Which is the most persecuted religious group in the world today? The answer, in terms of sheer numbers and sheer horror, might surprise you. It's Christians, specifically Christians living in Muslim-majority countries where Christians often preceded Muslims by centuries. I'm not talking about war on Christmas type harassment. I'm talking about know your place or we're going to kill you persecution. Astonishingly, the Western mainstream media barely acknowledge what is happening. Let's look closer at this issue. It tells us a lot about the world we're living in. 100 years ago, 20% of North Africa and the Middle East, the birthplace of Christianity, was Christian. Today, Christians make up 4% of the population. Much of that decline has occurred in the last decade. In essence, Muslims are rendering North Africa and the Middle East free of Christians. Take Egypt, for example, my ancestral homeland. In just the past 2 years, tens of thousands of Christian Copts have left Egypt. And many others want to leave, but they simply cannot afford to. Why they want to leave is no mystery. On New Year's Day, 2011, the Two Saints Church in Alexandria was bombed, leaving 23 Copts dead and 97 injured. In recent years, dozens of Coptic churches have been attacked, many burned to the ground. In August 2013 alone, the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters attacked and destroyed some 80 churches. Unfortunately, Egypt is more the rule than the exception. Hundreds of Nigerian churches have been destroyed in recent years, with especially deadly attacks reserved for Christmas and Easter church services, leaving dozens dead or mutilated. Churches have been bombed or burned in Iraq, Syria, and just about every place in the Middle East where churches still exist, except Israel. Christian businesses have been torched, Christian girls have been kidnapped, sold as child brides or slaves, and had acid thrown in their faces for not being veiled. Anyone born a Muslim who converts to Christianity faces jail and possibly execution. The list of fresh atrocities by Muslims against Christians grows longer almost every day. Even in Muslim countries often portrayed as moderate, Morocco, Indonesia, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Christian minorities are under legal pressure not to build churches or evangelize. The Christians in these Muslim countries are often identical to their co-citizens in race, ethnicity, national identity, culture, and language. There is no political dispute between the Christians and Muslims, no land dispute. Vastly outnumbered and politically marginalized, these Christians simply wish to worship in peace. Instead, they are hounded and attacked. So then, why is this happening? And why is the media making so little mention of it?
End of the study, the second half of it, because he gives pretty good answers, I believe. Christianity is being attacked. Mark 13, verse 13. Jesus said, regarding the end, you will be hated by all on account of my name, but the one who endures till the end shall be saved. The birth pangs in terms of persecution has only increased, has intensified. It used to be 50s and 60s, you hear a persecution behind the bamboo wall, which was China, the steel curtain in Russia. That was another persecution in the Eastern European countries. But now it's gone into the Middle East. It's gone into places where they never had persecution before. And now it's waging war in Europe against Christianity, rearing its ugly head in places like Australia and New Zealand in a sense of political and a sense of judicial, especially in America. And it's only going to get more intense as the labor pains begin more intense. But one religion that is growing very fast, and people have caught on to it, in America, it's Satanism. Satanism, it's alive and well and kicking. And it's thriving thanks to shows like Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, which is so real, even the Satanic Temple had to file a legal action against the show because it was so real that they actually had actual monument and designs of the goat deity Baphomet in it that they said, this is too real, you guys are way too much. We're going to have to file some legal action because it's supposed to be a fictional story, but your guys are gone beyond and are putting real Satanism on TV, on Netflix, I guess you could say. It's not the only place. Amazon won't let you sell some certain books, but they are very happy to sell Satan's books. Very happy to sell Satan's book. They will, they'll take books off of any books that contradicts vaccines and things like that. They'll take it off. You won't be able to sell it. Things that are, radical Christian books, nope. Satanist books seem to be kind of the name of the game. Switching gears very quickly, is this 1973 again, says the article. In 1973, you had a crisis. You had a crisis where the government was in shambles. People were trying to throw the president out, and oil prices were going through the roof. And gasoline prices are going through the roof now, and they're trying to throw the president out, even though the indictments against him, the Mueller case and all that stuff failed. Impeachment hearings are being done. I don't think they're going to throw him out, but it's putting pressure and pressure and pressure that I guess they said about Trump, if you're going to defeat him, just throw him out in 2020. If you're going to really get him out, just vote him out. Well, we'll see what happens in the next few years. But without a doubt, California has the highest prices of gasoline, and it's only going to go higher, according to many of the people that are looking at this from a global perspective because of what's going on in Iran. 401 average gasoline price. You ever been to the pump lately? Yeah. It's just like I almost feel like I need to put gas today because tomorrow will be higher. It just slowly, usually wait until it gets down, and I did. And it was like a 365, and now it's like a 405, and I should have put it at 365. It will continue to surge. There's no plan of slowing it down. Now, the rest of the country has about $2.83 for a gallon, average. We have 401, obviously we have the highest taxes on it, but they're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is the area of Iran. We'll show you a map in a minute. These are the things, there it is. These are the things that are really crippling our economy, really crippling our economy in California as well, but the rest of the nation. The sanctions continue, and it's only going to get worse. With the Democrats, this is fascinating. The only reason why I pulled it up is because what Omar said about Jesus. Omar has come out very aggressively saying the problem with the real victims of 9/11 were the Muslims. Now, this is an offense. I know friends that lost family in 9/11. The real victims were not the Muslims. The real victims were the people that died and what happened in 9/11. But she says, well, all these Christians are getting upset. Don't they realize Jesus was a Palestinian? Jesus was a Palestinian. Now, this is the old PLO line. Yasser Arafat, Jesus is a Palestinian. But it's not really their only line. You know who believes Jesus was like a Palestinian too? Replacement theology churches. Replacement theology churches, which basically denies the prophetic significance of Israel and says the church is the only thing that counts. And they say Israel has nothing to do with prophecy, has nothing to do with the end times. All those promises have been given over to the church, to the denial of Israel. There are churches that believe that. They have conferences every year down in Bethlehem, near Bethlehem. They call it Christ at the Checkpoint. And some of them believe that Jesus is a Palestinian. They deny any heritage of our faith tied to the Jewish people. Now, many people have questioned, why is Omar all of a sudden, and the Democrats, talking like this? And many believe, and I think they're onto something, that this Jesus Palestinian thing is going to be incorporated in the Democratic platform for the 2020 to draw churches that already have that misconception into a belief that, see, the problem is Israel. See, the problem are Christians who defend Israel. See, the problem are Christians who are pro-Israel. Jesus was a Palestinian. What's the big deal? The New York Times just ran this. Eric Coppage from the New York Times wrote an article. You know what it was called? Jesus was not Jewish, but a Palestinian. Jesus was not Jewish, but a Palestinian. This is New York Times, Omar, Democratic Party. I see where this is going. The majority of churches in America are replacementist. They are replacementist. Very few even denominations that are non-replacementist, because either by ignorance or by straight denial of the scriptures, they do believe God is done with Israel. Now, it isn't a satanic attack. I have to read my Bible to read what Paul said about Israel. He said that God has not thrown away his people. God forbid, he says. He has not. He says, well, people say, well, what about Israel? They never believed in the past. Yeah, tell me about it. Moses had very few people. Well, they don't believe in the present. That's right. They neither believed in the past and the present. Very few Jews have always believed. Very few have always believed. But their past condition and their present condition does not tell us about their future condition. Because Paul says, a deliverer will come out of Israel, and salvation will come out of Jacob, and all of Israel shall be saved. Meaning, all representatives of the Jewish people, the 12 tribes of Israel, will be represented as believers in Jesus at one point. And the natural branches will come back into the olive tree again. So the past condition and the present condition, which is not very good, most Jews are not, they don't believe in Yeshua, they don't believe in Messiah, but they're going to come back. They're going to come back to the original tree, and that is what it's missing, and that's what it's missing. But we're told by churches or we're told by the Bible to Christian churches to make them, to cause them what? Cause the Jewish people to be jealous. How can you make them jealous? Your Messiah is living in my heart. Your Yeshua is salvation, your salvation of Yahweh. It's the belief that I have. I believe in the God of Israel. How do you do that? How do you know the scriptures better than we know our own? Because God promised that there'll be a root of David who will make Gentiles believe. See, you start causing them to say, those are my scriptures, this is my God, this is my Messiah, and yet for Gentile believers, he's our Messiah too. And that causes them to have jealousy. But how can you cause them to have jealousy if you tell them you're done? God has no plan for you. They're not going to be in any way jealous toward that. By the way, this has been confirmed that Arab NATO is coming very, very quickly. An Arab NATO. What is an Arab NATO? Basically, nations from the Arab world that are Muslims uniting as a one-unit front to fight against the front of Iran, Syria, and of course Russia and Turkey. So there is a coalition that's coming, an Arab coalition. And they met this past week, a couple of weeks ago, April 8th. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, and Jordan have joined together in a big step to launch an alliance that will strengthen stability in the region, and they're all very much pro-Israel. You say, that's a good thing, isn't it? Well, yes, sort of. It's a good thing in a sense that they're not going to come and attack Israel, at least for now. And it's another thing that according to the deal of the century that's coming, June 5th, around Ramadan, some of these nations are going to be taking on Palestinian refugees for some pretty good money that is going to be given to them, some pretty good economic stimulus to those countries. And they want to come against Iran, and they want to come against Turkey, which Turkey and Erdogan has already said, Jerusalem is the red line. And guess what? According to the deal of the century, Jerusalem is not going to be up for play. It's going to be given to the Jewish people, according to the plan. A lot of things can change until June 5th. But he wants to unite an army of Islam. He wants to unite an army of Islam, about 57 Muslim nations, to come against Israel. And they said that we could destroy Israel in about 10 days. This united Muslim army in 10 days could destroy Israel. Now, the number 10 is quite significant in the Bible. I don't know why they even picked the 10, but it could have just been off the top of his head. But it's the number that God always uses when it comes to like a satanic trial. Remember Daniel and his friends had to be in the king's court for about 10 days. Jesus told the church of Smyrna that you're going to be thrown into prison for about 10 days. Satan's coming against you for about 10 days. 10 is always like a number of like a challenge, I don't want to read too much into it, but it is an interesting number that they picked. They could have said a week, but he said 10 days. The days of awe, right? About 10 days, the days of awe between Yom Kippur and Feast of Tabernacles. I'm just saying it's interesting. I'm going to make a doctrine out of it. I'm not. But it is saying that they picked 10 days, and 10 days are significant in the Bible. Is this a sign that these nations are coming? Well, there's no doubt. Zechariah 12, nations come against Israel. They surround Israel, just like the Romans did. And they'll come with the purpose to destroy, not just the temple, but they'll come to destroy the whole nation. By the way, Turkey is in Libya, supporting the rebels in Libya, trying to take control of Libya. By the way, Libya's been a disaster since Gaddafi was killed. Anybody remember who killed him? That's right, Hillary. What did she say? That infamous words, right? We came, he saw, he's gone, and she laughed, and I thought it was a demon. I actually thought it was a demonic spirit in her talking about that. If you ever see that interview, I'm not trying to be super spiritual. I don't see demons everywhere I go. I don't. I know the forces of evil are against the church and things like that, but I don't see them everywhere. But the way she talks and the way I have a video of her talking about abortion. It is quite scary. She says, I am a Christian, and she has no problem with her next sentences, killing babies. It is phenomenal in a bad sense. Unbelievable. No more waivers against countries that are supporting Iranian oil. No more waivers, says Mike Pompeo, says the United States. They're going to dry up the oil in Iran. No one's going to buy it. Now, China and India says we're still going to buy it, but there'll be no more waivers. And there'll be severe penalties for U.S. companies that still buy Iranian oil. From the one hand, you could say our prices are going to go up because now we're going to be supplied by other countries who are just going to keep increasing the price, which is true. But the fact is, this is a call for war. This is an economic war. That's right. Iranian military shouted back. Revolutionary Guard says, prepare for payback. We're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And we're still going to be buying, China and India are still going to be buying, but we're going to shut it down, and we're going to let no American ship go by that area. By the way, American ships are all in that area. They're already there because they guard other countries buying oil from Iran. So they're the U.S. is sort of like the bodyguards for these countries, like Germany and European nations. The U.S. Navy is there to keep everything at bay. Well, if they're going to keep being there, they're going to be attacked. So basically what Iran is saying, we're close to perhaps a war. Rumors are going through the roof regarding this. And I don't know what to make of it, but if it is true, we're getting close to a very real war near the Euphrates River. There are reports that the U.S. has attacked cities that are about an hour away from the Euphrates River, a couple hours away from the Euphrates River. They're unconfirmed, but U.S.-led coalitions are attacking the Syrian army, and the Iranian army that is in Syria. A lot of these oil fields are being guarded by Syrian army or by terrorist organizations, and they literally are, these terrorists are getting paid like $1,000 per person a day to keep the oil fields from being taken over by U.S.-led coalitions and other armies. So it's a war for oil. It's a war that's coming. I say it's really true. The U.S. Has denied all the reports, although Arab and Israeli newspapers have confirmed that they have attacked behind Syrian army. And these, they're sort of in the east of Syria. Now, what's interesting in Iran, we've been talking about Iran, a couple of things are happening. And it's truth is stranger than fiction. They can't deal with the plague of locust in Iran. There is severe, I had the video, but it was so hard to get it off and put it on a format that you could see it. Maybe I'll try it next time. In 40 years, so this is, again, this is the article, Iran battles worst locust in 40 years. I thought 40, and I said, oh, this is weird. 40 again? And a plague of locust, just like the book of Joel, just like the Egyptian locust. They don't know where it's coming from, but they said it's so bad. Provinces are basically, there's a famine in the areas of Iran where these locusts are going. But that's not the only thing that they're battling. Devastating floods. Millions of Iranians facing humanitarian crisis. Now, I don't take any joy in it or any pleasure in it, but it is interesting to say when a country gets this devastated, and they got a lot of money in oil, and they're holding the world hostage for oil, and they got a lot of weapons, and they are desperate. There's nothing worse than a wounded animal. I think Iran would rather attack Israel specifically, which will lead to, I would think, some of these wars that the Bible speaks about. So we'll see what happens in the next few days. But as a Christian, we have to be praying. We have to be noticing this stuff because it could happen very quickly. Remember, according to the scripture, the first seal that Jesus breaks is the Antichrist. Seal number 1 is the Antichrist. There is no how do I put it? There's nothing preceding that. Jesus could open the seals at any time. He's the only one that can open the seals. There is nothing that is going to keep Jesus from opening the seal except his own will, except what he wants to do. We read that on Sunday, Revelation 5. No one's worthy to break the seal or to look into the scroll. The scroll is the plan of the earth for the end, the plan for this earth for the end of the age. No one can look at it. No one can break it except the Lord. What's fascinating, every scholar agrees the first seal is the Antichrist, and there's nothing preceding it. There's no trigger. There's no trigger that they say, well, this has to happen before the first seal is broken. No, it just says he opens it. Just reading the Bible, it just says he opens it. There's no timeline to it, which is fascinating. But anyway, surveillance states coming. We've been talking about this, but China has perfected it and is going to Europe. It's going into Europe, the European surveillance. It is happening to all EU citizens. You're traveling to Europe, anyone traveling into Europe or the EU, because some countries are not EU, will be swept up in this new system. The data will not be limited to their citizens. It will be expanded to anyone that travels into the EU. Some countries are not in the EU. And by the way, the EU voted on it. Nobody else voted on it. There's no people. People didn't have a say-so in this. Just boom, biometric. 350 million people are now in the largest database, Common Identity Repository, CIR. And they voted for giant biometric database. By the way, Japan, if you travel to Japan, they're unleashing Japanese taxis with facial recognition. You go in, recognizes your face, and he knows what you like, and is going to put ads on your screen based on your persona. I guess age and gender will go along with it. Basically, so you can buy things. It's basically commercials. It's just commercials, and you can't opt out of it. Basically, you go in, facial recognition, ads for boots or newspapers or whatever you like. Advertisement. The actual footage claims will be immediately deleted. They said, you have nothing to fear. The image that is captured when you get into the taxi will be immediately deleted. And facial recognition will never leave the tablet. I remember when they used to say that. Remember when emails came out? I'm getting older, so I remember when emails came out. I remember when there was no emails, when the emails came out, and AOL, and what was the other company? Yahoo at first, they said, it is impossible that anyone will ever get into your emails. It's impossible. And that was like 1997, 98, AOL came out and all this stuff, right? Oh, it's impossible to decrypt and all this stuff. Now they have to have like so many versions of encryption because look at all the hacks that have gone into Yahoo, into Hotmail, into Microsoft. Well, this, of course, is going to be available. By the way, Elon Musk says, you know what? This is going to be really interesting because we are going to connect you to your computer. Your interface is no longer going to be needed to log in or anything. It's going to be a chip on your frontal cortex. We're basically going to create an AI into your brain. By the way, he started this in 2016. He says he's ready to unleash it, ready to come out with it. This ambitious goal of developing this hardware, of developing and enhancing the human brain, has been made public. So it's coming. And I've always had this bad sense of what they're going to do with the Neuralink. Because people are fighting over getting a chip into their right hand. If they're left-handed, they get it in their left hand, but right-handed for the most part. And people are fighting, people will be fighting to get a chip into your brain, frontal cortex. Now, I'm not saying that's the one on the forehead, the one on the right hand, according to Revelation 13, but that's what it says. But it does give you an idea that what he promises is you will have enhancement to your brain. You can access information quickly. So if I were to ask, let's say, Tony, you have it, but if I were to ask Tony, that he's got the chip last week, what is the date, whatever, what happened in 1967? And he can literally link up to Google, a search engine, or Wikipedia. Well, that one's false. But anyway, you can get to these websites and figure out instantly, get the information. He'll be like a super genius, and he'll have enhancements to it, right? Who wouldn't sign up for that? You can pass your tests. You can score high on your SATs. They're going to have to do something in order to keep people from using it in your exams, in your college, in your work. Or they're going to be the smartest guys in the world. They're going to be hired first and all this stuff. It's going to literally change the way people see things and the way people behave and interact. So something's coming. People are excited about this because it says it'll connect you to the Internet of Things. What is the Internet of Things? The Internet of everything. You all be linked up to a cloud. Just at the speed of thought, just like Bill Gates used to say, at the speed of thought, whatever you want. And they'll know what you like, and they'll know what your dreams are, and they know what you want, and they'll be appearing on your screen in front of your eyes. Here's the new makeup kit, or the new books, or the new whatever you like. I don't know what you guys buy, but in Israel, as we finish, Benjamin Netanyahu promised to name one of the cities in the Golan Heights because the U.S. has given him the rights to have the land in the Golan Heights, the area of Bashan in the Old Testament. Trumpville, coming to a theater or to a house near you. The Golan Heights, part of the Golan Heights, will be named after Trump, since his approval from his cabinet to give them the land back to Israel. And by the way, this is quite interesting. He said, what's the big deal about that? Well, this is supported by the Jewish temple. This is the Temple Institute, the Sanhedrin, which they already made a coin for Trump a couple of years ago. This is evidence of their changing to, this never would have happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. They're opening themselves up to a Gentile king, a Gentile ruler. And they're approving of him because they're saying, that's Cyrus. That's like Cyrus in the Old Testament. And of course, I think what this is setting up for, it's an opening up of themselves to Gentile rulers, which will be an evil one, according to the Bible, will be the Antichrist. Kushner, two-state solution says, have failed. In the past, any solutions that have brought peace to Israel or try to bring peace to Israel that included two states, Palestinians and Israel together, don't work. We're not going with that anymore. We're going to one-state solution, and because the other ones don't work, that means that Palestinians will have to leave. Now, he didn't say that, but that's the implication. If you're going to have one state and the other one's not Palestinian, it's only Israel, what's going to happen to the Palestinian refugees? In comes Egypt, in comes Jordan, in comes Saudi Arabia to take on those refugees. By the way, in Israel, the counting of the Omer has begun, which is the day after Passover. They begin to count the sheaves, the barley sheaves, and they begin to count 50 days after Passover to the Feast of Pentecost. What's the big deal about it this year? They say, well, we're trying to incorporate this in a social justice way, that we're trying to help the poor. See, this is a very important part. We're trying to help the poor by doing this. Now, there is a charitable aspect to counting of the Omer because they make bread, they give to the poor. It is true. But what's interesting is the Temple Institute wants to incorporate this social justice. Take care of the poor. Who doesn't want to take care of the poor? We have to do this temple thing because we're actually going to provide something that's viable for people to live. The poor, they need help. And the temple is going to be there to help you. I think one of the ways that the Antichrist is going to get in is through a social justice network, that this is good for the poor, this is good for society. And of course, counting of the Omer, it is biblical. They do count the days until the Feast of Pentecost, which will be somewhere around June this year, when Jesus was ascended and the Holy Spirit was poured out. But just to give you an idea of how the Temple Institute and the people there are thinking, the Jewish leaders, the religious leaders, that this will be good to have. So this is why we need a temple. By the way, in the area of abortion, it's getting very interesting. Faith leaders in Tennessee support abortion. They wrote a letter to Governor Bill Lee asking him to oppose the heartbeat legislation. 150 Tennessee faith leaders. Now, it included people like Islam, Unitarian, Universalist, pagans, priests, but it also included Christians of different denominations: Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist, Lutheran, United Church of Christ, Episcopal, Brethren, other ones that I've never heard of before, but Nazarenes, Anglicans, Jewish synagogues, all wanting Bill Lee to stop the heartbeat legislation. This is being done in the name of Jesus. Stop. We don't want to save babies. Heartbeat legislation, meaning that if they detect the heartbeat, you can't do an abortion. Tennessee wants to pass that. Faith leaders, Christian leaders, among others, I'm not saying they're otherwise they're Christians, but so-called Christian leaders are saying, stop this. We want to keep killing babies. In North Carolina, Governor Roy Cooper vetoes a bill protecting abortion survivors. Same thing in Wisconsin. They don't want to protect babies that have survived abortion. What's the big deal? Well, you realize that if you survive an abortion, they have to make a decision. That's what the governor of Virginia said. He's a doctor. He knows. If a baby's born, they say, we keep him alive, and then we make a decision. It's a creepy video. I played it here. The more I watch it, I go, this is demonic. And the way he said it is like, well, we keep him alive, and it's got that nice southern drawl, so it makes you think everything's good. We keep him alive, and then the mom makes a decision with the doctor. And what decision do you have to make if the baby's alive? Well, it's all about the definition of what a human is. And see, this is what Wisconsin is trying to get away from. These ambiguous law that says if a baby survives an abortion, is he a viable human? What is a viable human? Can we use him for something? Well, the doctor has to make a decision. And see, both Wisconsin and North Carolina are vetoing the clarification of the law. They're vetoing the clarification of the law. They're saying, we don't need this law that protects babies if they survive abortion. We don't need the law because infanticide doesn't happen. Nobody kills babies after they're born. And it's such a contradiction because the governor of Virginia and legislation from other states says the opposite. So it's just a big hypocrisy. It is so hypocritical that I had to play this video for you guys. This is lovely Planned Parenthood and the people that support it.
I am proud to be representing Time's Up.
Time's Up to sexual harassment, bullying, abuse.
We have a disease of an abuse of power.
That it's not just our industry, that it's a cross industry, and that many of us are experiencing harassment, abuse, discrimination.
I think us moving towards a world where we can end, or at least very much interrupt sexual violence.
Harvey Weinstein, everyone talks about the Harvey, but it's like, yeah, but who are the enablers? It's not the people who don't know that worry me, it's the people who do know and do nothing.
I'm Scarlett Johansson, and I support Planned Parenthood.
Arizona, 2014. A Planned Parenthood counselor intentionally miscoded a sexual assault as a consensual encounter to avoid the hassle of reporting it to authorities. Months before, other victims of the same sexual predator came forward.
Planned Parenthood provides so many more services than just abortions.
Live Action has released undercover videos showing Planned Parenthood staffers all too eager to help purported teenage sex workers get abortions and contraception.
I stand with Planned Parenthood because I want my girls to have access to birth control behind my back one day.
We're involved in sex work, all right? Some of them are young, they're kind of like, some like 15, 14.
Minors are always accepted without parental consent.
Okay. I work in sex work, okay, and there's some girls that I manage, and some of them about 14, 15, they're really kind of young.
From the age of 12 up, for birth control, you can just come in and do that.
Just come in and do it.
You don't have to have a parent, okay?
You can get birth control testing, like anything without a parent. The only thing that requires over 18, if they're a minor, is an abortion. But there's also a way to get judicial bypasses. We can get around that if you guys ever need it.
What does it look like when you activate the power of the Women's March and Planned Parenthood in the fight for low-wage workers?
Planned Parenthood actually allows victims of human trafficking to continue to be victims of human trafficking. And they're okay with that.
Former Planned Parenthood.
In my office, and I told my supervisor, like, listen, I'm trying to teach them about key concepts of Title X. You know, they're admitting that they're not going to report cases of statutory rape. The response from my supervisor was, your job is to teach them the key concepts, and that's it. And she was really upset with me that I challenged that.
I stand with Planned Parenthood because they stand with me.
There'd be girls coming in with their abusers, and even if they knew, even if I went to the manager and I said, look, there's something going on here, she would say, she's better off with the abortion. We can't do anything about what's going on at home, but at least we can give her the abortion.
Oh my God, the money! It has to be a Planned Parenthood.
Washington State, 2017. George Savannah repeatedly raped his daughter and impregnated her when she was 14, 16, and 17 years old. Each time she became pregnant, he took her to Planned Parenthood and forced her to get an abortion to cover up his crimes. One reason Savannah was able to get away with his sexual abuse is because Planned Parenthood repeatedly failed to report the suspicious incidents to authorities. After her abortions at Planned Parenthood, Savannah continued to rape her several times a week for 7 horrific years.
So much for Planned Parenthood being for women. The exploitation of women, sex trafficking, covering up rapes, covering up prostitution rings of girls 12, 13, 14 years old. So much for Planned Parenthood. And yet we have these so-called actors or actresses saying, oh, we have to support Planned Parenthood. This is what the girls look up to. But, you know, people look up to people that they do this for a living. They lie for a living. They're actors. They are actresses. They lie for a living. Does anyone know what the word for actor in Greek? Hypokritos. We get a word hypocrite. That's what the word actor means. They are hypocrites, and rightly so. That's right. Prayer for Nigerian Christians. Absolutely horrific things that are happening in Nigeria. Mum's the word. Has anyone heard this on any local news, Fox News or anything like that? No. Not at all. Why? Yeah. But even if you did, they wouldn't show it anyway. Yeah. Nigerian Christians are being exterminated right in front of our eyes, and many, many turn a blind eye to it. Many in the West that could do something about it. Thank God for people like Pence. Thank God for people like Mike Pompeo that have actually brought this up, and were even to release that pastor, Brunson, from Turkey a while ago. But not enough. Nigerian Christians are being exterminated. Let's finish off the video. Yes, sir.
But you see what's happening to Pence.
And Pence is being attacked, absolutely. And you know why? Because he's trying to sound the alarm. Yeah, that's right.
And why is the media making so little mention of it? The first question is easy to answer. Christians are being persecuted in Muslim countries because they're Christians, or as the Quran puts it, infidels. That is, non-Muslims who are regarded by many fundamentalist Muslims as inferior. As a fundamentalist interpretation of the holy books of Islam has grown in the last 50 or so years, Christians have suffered, and in recent years they have suffered terribly. I document this in my book, Crucified Again, Exposing Islam's New War on Christians. If this were happening to any other group besides Christians, it would be the human rights tragedy of our time. There would be loud worldwide calls for action. But the silence in the mainstream Western media is, as they say, almost deafening. Why? Because Muslim persecution of Christians throws a wrench in the media's narrative that Muslim violence is a product of Muslim grievance. That grievance is, first and foremost, portrayed as the sin of European colonialism and alleged American imperialism. In the Muslim world's mind, those two sins are personified by the Jewish state of Israel, a nation the Muslim world believes was forced upon it by the colonial powers of Europe following World War II and is currently supported by the United States. Much of the Western world and the Western media have largely bought at least some of this narrative. Here's how it works. Because Israel, with the backing of the United States, is stronger than its Muslim neighbors, the media, while not defending Islamic terrorism, often portray terror against Israel, America, and even Europe as the actions of understandably angry underdogs fighting for what they deem justice. But what happens to this media narrative when Islamic terror is directed against a minority weaker than them? In this case, the millions of indigenous Christians throughout the Islamic world. The answer is that, rather than abandon this narrative, the media just don't report Muslim persecution of Christians, except for the most sensational cases. That's why you probably don't know that there are barely any Christians living in Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, nations where Christianity once thrived, or that this is happening in Egypt, Iraq, Iran, and even Lebanon. So yes, Christians are indeed the most persecuted religious group in the world today. But reporting it would violate the media's narrative of Christians as persecutors and Muslims as victims. I'm Raymond Ibrahim, author of the Al-Qaeda Reader for Prager University.
Even unbelievers are aware of this, and they're coming out and saying, look, this is a travesty. Who's going to bring this up? Well, not the media, because it's all going to be covered up by Islam, LGBT. But you know, God has a plan. Christianity grows in Syria. Kobani, I think I talked about it last week, and I think I showed some pictures. Kobani church made up of ex-Muslims, growing. This is an evangelical church in Kobani, which is completely destroyed by ISIS. It was a stronghold of ISIS. Now you hear the songs of Jesus. Now you hear worship songs coming out of that terrible area, and people coming out. I was going to bring the video, but it was going to take too long. And God is doing a tremendous work in Syria. I'm going to skip this part. I didn't want to, but for the sake of time. But we can post this article if we needed to. In archaeology, several things are happening in Israel. They found the city, some walls in the city of Lachish, the ancient city of Lachish, which is in the book of Chronicles and Kings, as being built by Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. For a long time, they never believed that there was a king named Rehoboam, or there was no ties to the house of David. Well, here's a city that the Bible says very clear, 2 Chronicles, that was built by Rehoboam as a stronghold against the attacks from Assyria and from Israel. So there goes that theory. God's always ahead of his time, and the Bible is more current than anything else. But just to finish off, Christianity, not only in Syria, but in Pakistan. Believers, lots of believers in Pakistan. I think I showed a picture last week of Pakistani believers being baptized. Again, keeps growing. God's doing a great thing in those countries. But persecution is a heavy, heavy duty thing in our hearts. It's by the devil, but God has a plan. The gospel will go to the ends of the earth, and then the end will come. Just continue to keep preaching Jesus. Make sure the gospel keeps going out. The Lord is going to make sure he gets his people into the kingdom under heavy, heavy, heavy conditions. And it's only going to intensify as those labor pains upon a woman with child. But then the end comes, and Jesus comes and wins it all. But how long is it going to take? We don't know. That's the thing. But we're close. So the signs in Israel, signs everywhere. I think Christians ought to know the signs so they can live accordingly and they can know the truth and be set free. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for your grace that you've given us all these signs, all these news, that we can make an informed decision about how we're to live. I remember what Peter said, knowing all these things are at hand, what manner of person are we to be? Lord, help us to live godly, to love righteousness, to hate lies and hate evil, and hate the evil of this world and hate the evil of our own sin. And help us, Lord, to walk in your ways. Fill us with your Spirit, Lord, with truth and love. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys.